Now, this depicts what he's better known for. You can see the screen. Yeah. So he's known for creation of Apple. Now, when we take a character sketch of Steve Jobs, this is Steve Jobs. Yes. Huh. Now, this is different phases, how he looked in different phases of his life, and he is known. This discussion is on under the topic those who made it big in the world of IT, and this is the next discussion on Steve Jobs. We have taken up Devang Mehta in the last class. Now, when you see, he was very intelligent, and we'll go review his character. And then he said there are many positive sides to him. He was dynamic. He had a business vision, despite not being from the area of business at all, no business background. But he had a vision of how things could work. Now, there are many aspects of his personality that we will be discussing. He's known as to have what we call a Rashomon effect. Does anybody know what is a Rashomon effect? Before we move further, those who from English, literature background, English, BA English, MA English, what is Rashomon effect? Or those who are in fact fond of reading, what is Rashomon effect? It's from a movie made in 1950, which was very popular, which was called Rashomon. It is also known in psychology as a Kushuvara effect, Kuru Swaha effect. So those from psychology, let us have a view on what could it refer to. Kurosawa effect, Kurosawa effect, or what we call a Rashomon effect. Anybody can say, can add to it? Any wild guess? Yes, anyone? Okay, let me tell you, Rashomon effect is, it basically describes a fact that you might view something. So it is viewed by, say, 4-5 people together. Like in the movie, it was the movie Rashomon. It talked about it was a movie in which there was a murder, and this murder was seen by 4 different individuals. This murder was observed by was seen by 4 different individuals. So when they come as a witness, each of them give a different perception. Each of them give a different perception. So they have seen the same thing. So the facts are the same. The killing or the murder has been done in a one simple way, one single manner. But then 4 of them who come as witness, they describe it in different ways. So this is a Rashomon effect. So he was an individual about whom some of them will say very positive as things. There are many others who might say negative things about him. He was stubborn, and somebody would say he had a positive attitude. He was dynamic. He was willing. He was a risk taker. Some others would say negative things about him. So that is the same person, but then individual's perception about the individual, the same individual differs. So that's a Rashomon effect in a murder which was observed by 4, which was seen by 4, but all 4 describe it differently. So your perceptions make you think differently and react differently and have perceive things differently, and therefore they portray things differently. It was the same individual that you're talking about, Steve Jobs, but then different individuals reflect on the positive side of his personality, and there are many others who say no, he was very arrogant, very stubborn, and therefore they perceive his personality in a different way. So this is his personality is said to have what we call a Rashomon effect. Now let's move to briefly describe, take up his description. So this is Steve Jobs. His birth date is 24th of February. He was born in 1955 on 24th of February, and he died in 2011, October 5th of October 2011, and he died of pancreatic cancer. So that's Steve Jobs. Birth was in 1955 on February 24th, and he died of pancreatic cancer on 5th of October 2011. Now, his story is, let's say, instructive. It gives us many. Insights on how to manage business, how to perceive, how to develop a business vision. His story is cautionary also in nature, so it tells you to be. It's cautionary. I think it further does not need any description. But his story is filled with lessons. It is filled with lessons of innovation. He perceived innovation in a very different manner. So his story is of innovation. It is instructive. It is a cautionary tale, and his character or a personality is filled with leadership styles. So his is a unique leadership style that one can think of. So you're all future managers, future leaders. His is a very unique leadership style that one can think of emulating. His story is filled with values that one can learn, that one can imbibe. So his story is, let's say, instructive. Many lessons you can draw, cautionary lessons about business vision, lessons about innovation, a very strong character, personality, a very unique leadership style he had, and his story is also filled with values. Born on February 24th, 1955, he was an adopted child. His parents gave him away. He was born to Paul and he was adopted by Paul and Clara. And all through his life, when you read about his personality, his biography, he will see that he could not accept that fact that his parents sort of gave him away. So he could not. This is one a very bitter fact, which he could not accept all through his life, and the resultant effect was that he therefore his personality was a kind of a mixed character. So he wanted to have hold over things, and he wanted independence. The very fact that he was not he was disowned by his own parents gave him the perception of independence. He felt good in a way. He felt independent, that okay, I belong to nobody, and then I'm independent in many ways. But in the same way, because of this fact, he always also wanted to have hold over things. So it's a very mixed kind of a personality that he had. He could not accept this fact, and that very fact evolved his personality in a different way. He was very reflectively cruel. That is what they say. He was very reflectively cruel, very spontaneous in being cruel and harmful to others. And we say that patience was not a virtue that we can say he had, and he wanted control over everything. So there were two things: a mixed feeling of independence and the feeling of having control over everything. So you see, Apple's products are such that it cannot be integrated with other products. It's unique and different. So he wanted control over even his products. So this is reflected even in the products that he designed. So we describe his personality as his story is said to be instructive. His story is said to be cautionary tales that we can learn from. Many lessons we can learn about business vision, about innovation. He had a very unique leadership styles, and it is also filled with values. So I think we will play his, three advice that he gives to the graduates of Stanford University. It's filled with lessons. So he co-founded Apple Computers with Stephen Wozniak. So that's a personality you must remember, because that was his partner in 1976. And just see where he started all kinds of innovation, or the big business ventures started in small places. So Apple Computer had a small beginning in his father's garage. So it was in his father's garage that he started Apple Computers with a close friend of him, Stephen Wozniak, way back in 1976. And so we say there are two partners to Apple. One is Wozniak, and the other is Steve Jobs himself, wherein they had it was the equal sharing partnership business between the two. There was a third partner. So they had something like 45 share. The third partner, but the third partner had a 10% share, but he could not but he could not, in fact, visualize. The third partner could not visualize that this business is going to grow in leaps and bounds, and therefore he, sold off his share to both, to Wozniak and Stephen Jobs. Steve Jobs. So they started with a 45% and a 10% share, and the 10% share by the third partner was sold away back to Stephen Wozniak and Steve Jobs, because he didn't have a vision to to foresee that this business is going to catch up and do so very well. It was co-founded by Apple Computers was co-founded by Steve Jobs and Stephen Wozniak in 1976 in Los Altos, California. And today you can see it is one of the most valuable company of the world. So it is something, it is one of the most valuable company in the world, which had a beginning in his father's garage, which had a small beginning in the father's garage. Now, Stephen Wozniak was an electronics man. He had a technical background, and it was combined with Steve Jobs' business foresight, his business vision. And it's unique to know that he really didn't have any business knowledge. He didn't have an MBA or anything of the kind, or even a BBA to support him. But he had a vision. He had a vision. So it was his leaps of imagination. So when we talk of Steve Jobs, it was his leaps of imagination with remarkable feats of engineering. So the engineering skill or the technical skill was of his friend Stephen Wozniak, and the vision was of Steve Jobs. And when you read more, you'll realize basically every product was designed by Wozniak. It was he who was instrumental in developing every single product. But of course, the idea was that of Steve Jobs. He would just illustrate this is how it should be. When you talk of the mobile phone, it's very expensive. And he did say that, look, we want to use a glass which is unique. And it was said that, okay, it's going to be very expensive. He said, doesn't matter. Jobs said that doesn't matter. But it is something which will give a very sleek look. So you can see that Apple's products has a very sleek and unique look. So it doesn't matter. But if it's an Apple's product, let it have the glass, which no other product can have, no other mobile sets have. So it was basically Wozniak's technical knowledge. But Wozniak also knew that what do I do if I can manufacture these products, but I will not be able to sell it. So he was also dependent on Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs knew this. He knew this. He's a technical man, and he can create products. He can design wonderful products. But what do? He does not have the capacity, or he does not have the vision, or he does not have the business power to know how to sell these products, how to market them. So the marketing skill is what Steve Jobs had. But so Wozniak knew, he was in a way he knew I can design products, but what to do with it? He did not have the kind of skill to sell the product, to communicate, to sell across to the market. So it was basically Steve Jobs' business vision and the technical knowledge of Wozniak, which led to such wonderful products that we see today. Such wonderful products that we have and we see today. His parents wanted him to study, so this is a fact, and they made a pledge when they adopted him. Okay, so when the contract was signed, they adopted Steve Jobs, that was the only condition that the own parents wanted. They wanted him to study, so the contract was laid down that we will give you our child on the basis that you ensure that he will go to college, he'll be educated. So that is something that they were looking forward to. So his parents, his biological parents wanted him to study, and that was there in the contract. And even parents who adopted him therefore took a pledge when they adopted the child that they will ensure that the child studies. But when he went to college, Steve Jobs was very obstinate by nature. And he decided, this is the school, this is the particular college I will go to. So it was not a state school. You must be knowing the state school fees are less, and the private schools fees are very high. So he made so when he decided of all the schools he screened out, and he decided to go to Reed's College, which was one of the most expensive school in the entire USA. So then he knew one thing, that his parents at any cost want him to study. So this is what the children, this is what your parents want, and then the children many a time they try to they try to sort of they know this fact and they try to bargain, and they. So this is what he did. He was not much interested in studies, but he knew that my parents at any cost want me to study. So he chose a very costly school. He did not go for the state schools. The parents offered him Stanford. They said that, okay, you can go to Stanford where you can get part scholarship. So that means partly the fees would be less. But then he said that I would not like to go a place like Stanford because in Stanford, students who come are the students who know what they want to do. So they're not artistic by nature. They're not creative by nature. I would not like to go to school, which is so very structured, and the people come who know what they want to do. So he was very. He said, I would like to go to school where I can find out what is it that I really want to do. So even now, I can tell you in MBA, I often ask this question to students: how many of you know where you want to be 10 years hence? And there are many students, who are not very sure what. Okay, they're doing MBA, but very sad to know. But then, of course, we have a mixed crowd. So there are some who are very focused and they're clear. This is exactly what they want to do. What next? But there are many others who would not be very sure. So I often ask this question, where do you see yourself 10 years hence? There are many who are comfortable in answering because they have a vision. They know what they want to do. There are many others who are, fine, they're doing MBA and let's see. So he's the kind of a person who said, I would not like to go to a school where people are so very sure of what they want to do. I would like to go and explore and find out more about myself. So he felt that Stanford is not very artistic. So he decided not to go to Stanford. So that was an option that his parents gave, saying that you can go to Stanford because you will get a part scholarship. It's very expensive to send you anywhere else, because he refused to go to what we call the state schools. He refused to go to the state schools. Then he chose to go to Reed's, and he knew that since his parents at any cost want him to study, they'll send him there, despite the fact it was one of the most expensive colleges in the nation. So since his parents wanted far off, he went to Reed's to study. And very soon, because he was really not interested in study, he could not catch up with what was going in the class, and he used to get very bored. He quickly got bored with what was being taught in the class. And he told Wozniak, these were the words, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. So some of the classes he liked to attend, he attended those. Those he didn't like to attend, found it very boring, he didn't go for those classes. And he often complained to his friend Wozniak, just imagine, they force me to study these papers and I find it so very boring. So he refused to go to those classes, and he went to those classes that interested him. Like he went to the dance class, no studies, okay, fun time, and he felt he could express himself through those dance classes. Then he liked to go to the calligraphy classes. He was fascinated by calligraphy. And so he selectively went for the classes, not dutifully as a student that, okay, I'm a student, I have to study this. He found some of the courses boring, so he never attended those classes. Those he found interesting, he attended those classes, like dance, like calligraphy. Calligraphy basically fascinated him. And he said, I was fascinated by the serifs and the sans serifs and the varying space between them. So when a particular letter, you put strokes. Say you write a T and you put a stroke at the tail of the T. You write an F. You put a stroke on the two arms of the F. So he was very fascinated by this kind, how different people write it different way. So he was fascinated by calligraphy. So that's one class he went to. I was fascinated by the spacing between the letters, the proportionally spaced fonts. A serif is a decorative stroke. That's how we define it. That finishes off the end of a letter's stem. And often we call it the tail, the feet, we give it different names. This is what we're talking about serif. So if this is an F, we make it very stylish by, putting a, stroke on this F on the different ends, the arms of the F, or a T, make it stylish this way. And A, rather than writing it a plain A, you put a stroke at the two arms of the A. So he was fascinated, when we write scripts, how we keeps equal space between them. And, he says that, I mean, that's my perception also. Any knowledge does not go waste. Sometime it comes back to you and you're able to utilize it in some way. So his knowledge of calligraphy, of the spacing, of the font size, he said he could use it later on, years later, when he designed the Macintosh. And that is how he says, and even that's my belief, that no knowledge goes to waste. So you're reading something, with how is it connected to MBA? How does it help me in running the business? But you never know, you'll be able to reflect back and relate to it sometime, somewhere. Sometime, that's how I also believe. So no knowledge ever goes to waste. And he talks about connecting the dots. I don't know how many of you have read this book, Connecting the Dots by Rashmi Bansal. Aspirants of MBA, you've been a year back. How many of you have read? Let me know. A single.
Ma'am, first time I heard it in the speech of Steve Jobs when he was delivering in Stanford.
Yes. So at least
He
you've
used
gone
this
through it.
term.
Yes. He talked about connecting the dots and keeping that in mind. Rashmi Bansal wrote this book, Connecting. How many of you have read her book? It is about entrepreneurs who have passed out from the IMA. IIM Ahmedabad. She was also a student of IIM Ahmedabad. And when she used to sit in the class, and that's what she's written in a book, she would say, I used to keep wondering what I'm doing here. I kept wondering what I'm doing. I'm not made for this. She said, just imagine being placed at IIM, being a student of IIM. She said, I would sit in the class and wonder. Years later, when she wrote this book and she was acknowledged because it was selling like hotcakes, so the dean called her back to the college and they honored her. So she used the very same terms, connecting the dots. You can connect the dots backward. So everything which has happened in the past has a reason. And when you reflect back, you'll be able to connect it. Okay, like his, you can connect it. That's how, then she says that this is where I was. I studied here years back because I had to be honored by this university. So this is how she talks about connecting the dots. In her book, basically she has covered prominent people who are pass outs of IIM Ahmedabad who chose to be, who chose to be entrepreneurs. So they didn't want to work under anybody. And they wanted to be entrepreneurs. They set up their own entrepreneurship venture. And she has used the term connect the dots, of obviously picking up from Steve Jobs' commencement speech at Stanford University. So he talks that, see, my knowledge about calligraphy, the strokes, the spacing, all came up later on when I went to design the Macintosh. So no knowledge ever, goes to waste. And whatever you've learned, sometime later in life, when you reflect back, it has a link. You'll be able to associate it. That's what he says, that you can connect the dots backwards. You can't connect it forwards. Okay, so whatever has happened, you'll be able to connect it. So this had a link with this had a link with this. So you can connect the dots backward. You would not be able to connect the dots forward. So that's what she talks about. Serif font is a font that has serifs, while a sans serif is one which does not have a serif. That means it does not have a stroke. It does not have those sans. So these had no practical application in his life then. So when he was doing calligraphy, going for the classes, he went for the classes because it interested him. But it had no link with his life, whatever he was studying. I mean, it had no purpose at that point of time. So it had no practical application in his life then. But later he used this very knowledge in design of his Macintosh. He said, when I designed the keyboard, I ensured that they are proportionally spaced. So that's what I also believe. No knowledge is ever a waste. It can be used in future. And he talks about you can connect the dots backwards and you can use this knowledge, whatever you've imbibed, whatever you've been able to retain, you'll be able to reflect on it and use it somewhere, somehow in your own, later in life. So this is his young age. He was not interested in studies. He used to not go for some of the classes which bored him. He went for classes which interested him, like dance, calligraphy, because he found them to be more creative. And then later in life, when he was doing college, this is what he told to Wozniak also, that I realized I'm wasting my time. And all my working parents' savings, because Reeds was a very expensive college. So they would put in the savings and put it, for his education. He says, realize I'm not really interested and unnecessarily I'm wasting my parents' money. So all my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuitions only. So he said, I'm really not interested, and why should I, my parents hard earned money, both of them would earn and put in just to, educate him. And so he decided to drop out. So he left the college and he took a small time job of a technician at Atari, with where he was paid $5 an hour, and he started earning money young because he wanted to come to India. And he was at that time 70s. You must have heard about the Hare Krishna movement, and he was fascinated by that movement. And he would often go to get influenced by, he used to often visit and get influenced by them. So he started earning money. He left the job. He left his education, dropped out of school. So you see, he was a dropout, no educational background, but where he made Apple reach without any business background, without any business learning, business skills. But it was his vision, he could foresee things which, people could not visualize. And so he wanted to make money because he wanted to come to India. And he had a desire to come to India. And he came to India in search of what we say enlightenment. He always questioned, who am I? What is the purpose? What is my role? What is the purpose of my life? So that has a link with his, not being adopted in childhood. So that, he was in search, like, where are my actual biological parents? Who actually am I? So that used to, trouble him a lot. So he wanted to make money in order to come to India in search of enlightenment. And therefore, he took up a job at Atari, earning only $5 an hour. He collected money and finally came to India in 1974. He stayed at Haridwar, foothills of Nainital, and foothills of Nainital. And then he says, I had been turned on to the idea of enlightenment, and I was trying to figure out who I was and how I fitted into things, who I was and how I fitted into things. However, he returned back in 1975, and in 1976, with Stephen Wozniak, he started this small business venture, Apple, and he developed whole new set of devices and services that we hear of today, and consumers did not know that they needed yet. So he gave them the thing people did not visualize. He was able to do so by connecting creativity with technology. Technical knowledge was Wozniak's and creativity was his. So he could do so by connecting two different aspects. One is technical knowledge with creativity. So he gave a vast range of things consumers did not know that needed, and he was able to do so by by connecting creativity with technology. He did not believe in market research. What do? Before we launch a product, we undertake market research. We do a market survey. Consumers' preference for certain colors, consumers' preference for a certain item, a certain design. But he said a big no to market research. He says, what is it that consumers know? Because customers do not know what they want until we show them. And very nicely he put it. He says, our task is to read things which are not yet on the page. So don't read things which is already printed. We have to give them things which they have not visualized and see the market response then. So he said a big no to market research. He says, because customers actually do not know what they want until we have shown them. See, a mobile can be like this. A laptop can have this look. So he says, our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. I think, okay. So we stop here, and I would like to just try out giving you, I would send you a link, and on that, I will send you a link. You would like just have 10 minutes time to open that and open that link that has a set of questions on Devang Mehta, which we have done earlier. Let me try it out. Hope and try to fill it up fast and submit it. Let me see if I can do it. Some technical glitch. I'm not able to. I'm not able to. Just a second. I'm not able to open it. Let me carry on with the class. Probably I'll take it up on the following class. Let me carry on with the class right now then. So what he said is he said a big no to market research, and he said that okay, he did so by creating connectivity technology with creativity. He said a big no to market research because he said customers do not know what they want until we have shown them. And he says our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. So customers actually do not know what is it that you want. So it is we who have to design and tell them, see, mobile can be like this. So then let us see. They will be fascinated because it is something they had not visualized. Now, in order to give his company a strategic direction, he brought in John Sculley, who was the CEO at PepsiCo. And PepsiCo was flourishing at that point of time in 1983. So PepsiCo was flourishing, and he, we call it employee pinching. You do it in HR later on. In human resource, we call it employee pinching. We give a basket of incentives to the employee who's working very well in the other organization, and you envy it, and you want that employee in your organization, because you find him committed, you find him he has a vision, he has ideas. So in 1983, he brought in John Sculley, who was the CEO of PepsiCo, to help the company give a strategic direction. And he said, how you mobilized John Sculley to join his company, to join Apple. He was very tactful in this way. Steve Jobs was very tactful. So when he went Scully, he told him, okay, nice meeting you, this and that. And then he says, do you want to sell sugared water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to take a chance to change the world? He says that this is how, he mobilized Scully to join him. He looked down on PepsiCo, not openly, but he did so indirectly. So what is it that you're selling? You're selling sugared water. So do you want to go on selling sugared water for the rest of your life, or do you want to get a chance to change the world? So that is what Apple is doing. They're changing the world. They're changing the business scenario. They're changing the computer world. That's what he says. That do you want to see? He wanted to get Scully. He was very tactful in his wording. So when he met him, he said, do you want to sell sugared water for the rest of your life, or do you want to take a chance to change the world? So this is how he brought over Scully to his own organization, and Jobs was very happy because Scully could steer Apple in the right direction, and this is how he brought in Scully. But very unique or very sad, this very Scully CEO cornered Jobs and threw him out of Apple. So Apple was his company. So he threw him out of the own company. So Jobs brought Scully very tactfully, because he was totally reliant that Scully could give the company a good direction. But later on, differences came up, and how the business would run. And it was Scully who threw Jobs out of the business, out of his own company. So Jobs was thrown out of the own company. And why the differences came? There was a clash of interest where the strategic direction was. For Apple, the company, for Scully, Apple was a company which would give business. So for Apple, the company, Apple was business for making money. We want profits. We want sales turnover to increase. But for Jobs, it was a passion. It was a passion. And so there was a difference. So many a time, Jobs would indicate something. He would want something which would be very risky. And Scully would not promote. So there was a clash of interest. For Scully, it was business. Apple meant business, making money. But for Jobs, Apple was basically a passion. He was passionate about Apple. And therefore, Jobs was thrown out of business. And even the board of directors sided with Scully, and Jobs was thrown out of business. He was thrown out of Apple. He was thrown out of the own company which he built because of divergent views, because he was passionate about things, and because of the love for Apple. Not he was not thinking about money. And Jobs was devastated. I think we stop here. We can carry on in the class. I don't know whether on 5th, 6th we have regular classes or not, because training presentation schedules have been announced. Any queries so far? It's very interesting to take a character sketch of a very prominent personality from the world of IT. Any query, anything you want to ask? Now the apple, the logo is a half-eaten apple. Can anybody say why it's a half-eaten apple? Or I give you, time to explore for the next class. Let's see you come up with the version why a half-eaten apple. The logo is a half-eaten apple. So that's the, let's say, the task for you, assignment for you for the next meet, till we meet next. Okay, students, we wind up with the class.